Milo, morning. Michelle here. I, uh, excuse me, Milo, excuse me. Go. Uh, I am, another morning in Ghana. Michelle, this cat is distracting me. I am actually waiting on a taxi to pick me up so I can go on the road, but I don't want to lose my train of thought in what I have to say. And it concerns, I guess, safety here and some of the situations we find ourselves in, that if we are cognizant of them prior to, you can look for it. I know some persons see red flags and they ignore it. I have been guilty of the same thing a time or two. But the reason I'm mentioning it is because it's concerning for a number of reasons. And for me, as a mother, it is especially concerning. And for a new resident in Ghana, and this environment is something I think is extremely important for us to pay attention to. Now, let me get it out of the way in saying that everywhere you go, there are good people, there are bad people. There are good Ghanaians, there are bad Ghanaians. There are good diasporans, there are bad diasporans. There are good Jamaicans, bad Jamaicans, and so on and so forth. Right? When I decided to come here, those things is not at the forefront of your mind. They're way to the back. But I grew up in different communities. And one of the dangers of communities that people ignore, and this now is not just community where you have different families, or communities where you have only families, people who are related by blood, or communities where you have both. But there are dangers inherent in those people, because in those communities, those situations, that some people just don't address. Some people don't share because there are traumas involved. I've had a traumatic life. I'm not saying it to gain sympathy or anything, but it's in a way to lay the groundwork or the framework for what I want to say. I grew up with I grew up in a dysfunctional home. First of all, a very narcissistic father. One. Two, my relationships, and I'm not saying it's because of this dramatic, dysfunctional family why my relationships never work out. But my first daughter's father, David's father, was an abuser. I mean, not just physically. Drag here, whole knife at throat, beat up. I'm not talking about physically. There's the emotional impact of something like that, living in a situation like that. And then there is the emotional abuse inherent in people who abuse, that they toss. As there's a lot of gaslighting, there's a lot of projecting and so on, right? And what that does is make me very careful of men around me. One of the things I realized during that very traumatic period of my marriage, my first marriage, was that I did not trust the friends my husband had. Never trusted them. Here they say birds of a feather flock together. And because of that, I was very careful who I left my daughters with, where they went, everywhere I went, I took them. And that went for the older one as well as the younger one. My own experiences too made me very careful, because I went to families home and was sexually abused. And that happened 3 or 4 times. I had friends who invited me out to talk. I have experienced date rapes. I can name I could sit in a 1-hour video and tell you my experiences where men are concerned. And I'm not bashing men because of that. I am not saying all men are bad. What I'm saying is it makes me very, very sensitive to how men speak to me, the questions they ask, the gestures they make. You know, the tickling in the handmill for once a very inappropriate but sly one that some do. And many of them think in proposition you, whether by gesture or verbally, it is nice, it is showing respect. I don't know. I've always felt insulted when married men put questions to me or put argument to me, as we say in Jamaica. But I just want to say it is here as well. I had a married man ask me about my private parts. I mean, general, nice conversation. Not even, we didn't even have a conversation. He just said he had a question to ask me, and he asked me about my private parts. Very disrespectful, very inappropriate. But the problem generated from that one situation is something I just wanted to share, because what that did to me, having just arrived in Ghana, was made me very... I've always been nervous around men. So you can imagine somebody who I respected. I naturally keep my distance from men, especially married men, especially if they are men who are husbands for friends, female friends of mine. Female friends are acquaintances. I try to keep my distance. I try to be respectful, but I try to keep my distance. So imagine just arriving and have a question like that posed to me by an acquaintance who I respected and whose husband I just didn't see like that. And in a situation where I'm new, I'm navigating, I did not know everybody. So it was a very tight-knit circle at first. There are very few persons you can go to and ask advice on who workers are, what kind of caution advice I can give you in terms of building your home. You come here expecting that, yes, you are coming to a new country, you don't know the Ghanaians, but you also are thinking that the diasporans, whether they come from Jamaica to Canada or Jamaica to US or Jamaica to the UK, they would be a default in terms of helping you. So here the scenario is, and here's the ricochet. If he can approach me like that, what does that say for him and his friends? That's one. You remember the birds of a feather flock together thing? It limits your, what you call now, your support group. Why are you biting me, Milo? Oh my God. Milo, these claws are sharp. Your teeth is sharp. Sorry about that. Yes, it limits the support group, right? It makes you not trust them. It makes you very leery or very wary of accepting help from them, because you are wondering what that could lead to. One, I'm in a unique position. The fact that I have so many girls around me. So I have 3 young girls around me that
You're done?
hold on, please.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Just a little bit of problem. I was there. I don't want to veer off, but I had to pause the video because the taxi that we were trying to get, he has like hung us out to dry a couple times. So I'm a little bit leery when I asked him last night to pick us up this morning at 9. So when I tried calling him at 8, I normally call him and say, you're on your way like an hour before. He say, you're on your way to me, I'm ready, you know, even if I'm not. So then I'll hear exactly if he's coming or not. But I'm hearing that he had car problems, and he had car problems up to after 9, and we should have left 9 because we want to get to the hair client by 10. All of that has been knocked out because there's other guy that I've used before, but I don't trust him because, well, that's another story. But called him, he gave us a price, and then I was thinking the one who has a car problem wouldn't fix the car problem, but he called back, and I prefer to drive with him since he actually no call back. So I'm trying to get the other one who I don't trust, and I've called him 5 times so far, and he has not responded. So I told the other one to still come. So I'm looking to see who arrives first, and I feel a little bit uncomfortable about doing it this way, but I'm not sure how to solve the problem because I don't want to sit here for the whole morning and don't get to go where I'm going. And it's largely because they don't tell us straight up what they're doing. They'll say, oh, I'm coming now, and 1 hour later they haven't reached. And that is what the taxi driver, they want the fare, but they probably have somebody in the car taking somewhere, and they say, oh, I'm coming now, but they're driving somewhere to leave the person they have in the car somewhere, and probably do a couple other things before they get to us, you know, so they'll have us waiting on them. So I know some persons would say you shouldn't have done that, but I'm not sure, and I really have been calling him to tell him not to bother come, because the one that had a car problem, we prefer to drive with him. He normally is more reasonable with his price, although the price I got from the one I don't trust it didn't sound so bad when I checked out, but we'd pay for fare for each of us to get where we're going. So I'm kind of leaving it in the hands of the Most High to see who gets here, and I'm going to try that other person, so I may pause again. But as I was trying to say, I hope I can gather my thoughts back together. I was saying that I was in a kind of unique situation with having girls around me. And I know people are gonna say it's the way of the world, and men will be men or boys will be boys, and everywhere you go you have boys club and all those things. And I know people will see my video and pass it on to the relevant persons who they surmise or think this is in relation to. And power to them. Whatever they hope to gain from it, that's fine. But my support group narrowed because, and that's here in the diaspora and group, where I hear quite a number of persons, and they're not wrong in saying it, that we should stick together, be a support to each other. And I'm hoping it's not stick together in the sense that we're segregating ourselves, but stick together in terms of support. Where the general population of Ghanaians fall short, we have the diasporans to, you know, merge and be a support. It's just that in situations like that, you have to think about how it affects your building here. Advice you would likely get from these persons who you don't trust. The reactions of their spouses, if they have spouses. And if you have young children, be very, very careful, especially young girls, because some men, men in general, you have very perverse men, you have pedophiles are everywhere. Some of them don't even consider themselves pedophile, because you have old men here exploiting the young women because they know money is a catcher. And they feel comfortable doing it. And in an environment like this where poverty is rampant, you can understand why they can get away with it. You can understand why the young girls allow it, the parents allow it. But as a Westerner, as somebody, and I can't say Westerner either, I'm from a third world country. I don't know why I'm saying I'm a Westerner. As someone who is coming from Jamaica with my background with these kind of men, I cannot ignore it, and I cannot sweep it under the rug. I cannot mince words. There are predators here. There are predators here for young women, for babies, for any age group of women you can think of. There are women who can navigate it very successfully. And I'm not speaking just off my head. My granddaughter has been, I don't even want to say approach, but one situation or two situations now, my daughter came home very, very upset, very, very emotionally aggravated because a big old man grabbed what I still call a baby. Some people are going to say, oh, 13-year-old is not baby. 13-year-old in some countries are getting married. I know there are places still probably in some African countries. I don't know about Ghana. I can only speculate. But there are persons who still believe in child marriages. It's abhorrent to me. But there are persons who believe in it. There are persons who are okay with it. There are other persons who are desensitized to situations like that. As a teacher, I've had students in Jamaica who talk about a 12, 13-year-old who got pregnant for a 35-year-old man, and they say, the girl bad. And the girl wants it. And the girl. And I've just I've never understood and will never understand that type of thinking, that mindset. And I thought of it because my granddaughter said one day she heard a big man say in a shop to a young girl, you know how long may I ask your mother to give you to me? And it was, I know the person who said it. I have an idea of, the person is either my age or older. So it's my peer. And to have one of them say something like that to a fairly young girl is abhorrent. And this now, even though my young daughter is 18-year-old, I don't want her to be sexualized. People will say, oh, she's 18, big girl. My big 18-year-old girl is very innocent. She has very little interest in a relationship at this point. So can you imagine a big man being interested in her because he believes in more than one wives, having more than one wife? That was a taxi driver calling. The one that I told you that I don't trust. Well, he had issues with his car as well. So he's not coming. So the one who we had the prior arrangement with, his car is fixed, and yes, he's on his way. So I'm not in a rush. I was hoping that I was out of this place earlier than this, but I've learned a time or two that you don't know what you are being protected from when things don't work out the way you want them to work out. All right. So back to what I was saying. I cannot agree with somebody hitting on my daughter. The thing they ignore. For a man here who comes from a country in the West, I think a country in the West, he had one wife, but he knows that in deeply rural traditional areas here, it's probably still practiced where you take more than one wives. If you do your research though, it's not a dominant feature of Ghana. It happens, but it's not a dominant feature. And as people become educated, they are moving away from the idea that I should be a part of a household where 3 wives. The idea too that Abraham, and they can name all the biblical persons in the Old Testament who had more than one wife, or more than one wife, or had their first wife and then they take a second one or whatever. While it was allowed, and that is something you can research, every single one of those situations biblically created contention, jealousy, strife, abuse, all of them, right? I remember I came home and I said to Carissa, Carissa, what do you think about people anybody using the Old Testament as an example for okaying having more than one wife? And she said, all those in the Bible appear problems, all kind of problems, jealousy, and she named them. So I didn't even have to tell her that. It objectifies women. Imagine have a young daughter, never had a boyfriend, and a big old man, 50 or 60-year-old man, come to you and say, I'm interested in your daughter. I'm just asking you to think about that scenario. Come to you and say, I'm interested in your daughter because I think it's a way to help her. Yeah. Of course, his way of helping himself, because he probably wants to pass on his legacy, his bloodline. There is a school of thought that Europeans through colonization were the ones who forced us to accept one man, one wife idea. The funny thing is, monogamy existed before Europeans existed. And I already addressed the biblical aspect for monogamy. Not fully, but for those persons who have a relationship with the Most High, you should know where he stands on monogamy. So I'm not going down that road. There is the school of thought too that because the Bible holds to monogamy, we should realize that is man write the Bible, and therefore you can't take everything in there as truth. Some wipe out the entire Bible too as anything that you can use as a guideline, moral compass, because a man writes it. You know what is the irony? They want to support their idea of polygamy with textual information written by men who don't even hold to any kind of spirituality. In actual fact, I could go on, Mama Milo. I could go on and on this topic. But the essence of this dialogue right now between me and my subscribers is that if you are coming to Ghana, you have to keep in mind not just what house you're going to build and where you're going to build it. You have to think about the persons that are likely to be around you. It becomes more imperative if you have children. What narrative is going to be passed on to your girls? What narrative is going to be passed on to your boys? The age that there is expectations for relationships here. I can't speak totally to that because I'm not sure what is the norm. I just know for me, the norm is my 13-year-old granddaughter is a baby. My 18-year-old is my baby, and while she's an adult or considered an adult as 18, I will not sit by and have an older man, for example, older man, take advantage of her budding sexuality, budding maturity, budding emotional intelligence. Some of them are not emotionally intelligent, you know. They have never sat and thought about what is the best way to approach a woman in a respectful and moral way. And while me know many of them are cats, some consider themselves dogs and they embrace it. That's them. Let's just leave it at that. That's them. Just be careful how you come here, what your expectations are. I realized one day I sat and I was just talking to a friend of mine, I think it was 2 days ago, about the fact that situations like these make you wonder who you bring into your immediate environment, who you ask for help or assistance. You don't want to alienate anybody. You don't want to alienate yourself. But you do have to be careful how you step. And I never thought about it until I ended up in the situations that I did regarding these things. The Ghanaians, some of them, they really believe that men are important to the extent that you shouldn't do without them. I had one year trying to convince me that I have to get married. I live in Ghana now. I have to get married. And I have so many girls. I have to get them married off. They wouldn't know how stubborn I am. How dogmatic I am about my beliefs. I'm not any more moral than everybody else. I don't take any moral high ground above anybody. My thing is, my beliefs are my beliefs. My triggers are my triggers. And I'm not going to use one person's fat to fry another. But my experiences have traumatized me. But they have also made me stronger and strong enough to fight for my kids tooth and nail. And I will do that. And they are free to make their own choices. Don't get me wrong. But they are also smart enough and strong enough to don't put themselves in certain situations. I continue to pray for them. I continue to pray for persons who are coming, especially those who are coming with children. Not saying to come here and smother your kids. Just be aware of the dangers surrounding them. The one time I made a mistake and a mother came to me and invited my daughter to her house, I ended up regretting it. So it's one of the reasons I don't do sleepovers. They never have and they never will. I've had uncles sexually abuse me, nephews older than me sexually abuse me. So family is just as bad in some cases. So just imagine a stranger, right? But it's usually persons close to you. And there are so many different ways. I still remember the relative who has a child. You remember the weirdest things, you know? I remember this man. My mother went to visit relatives nearby. One stream of cousins. And this man take me up. I don't remember what age I was, you know. But he lift me up and put me upon him lap. And that man put me right upon him private part. And I felt it. I felt it enough to shift. And that man lift me up and put me back. Exactly where he put me. Never forget it, you know. Never forget it. And I know that I was very, very young. I know I wasn't old enough to know about sex and those things. But I'm saying that to say, even a simple thing like that, your child can be in danger and you just don't recognize it. Here was my mother now in a family home talking to her cousins, and here was one who is also probably a family member doing things to her child that she had no idea about. She sent me to my uncle to stay for the summer, and he did his thing as well. Sent me to, and I can name them. So, mothers, be careful where it comes to your children. Don't come here thinking everything is safe and your child will be safe. You have to create a safe environment. That's all I have to say in his name. Hope you get what I'm saying. I know people probably going to share the video. I'll pray for you while you share it. Alright? Have a good day. That's my few words.